All eyes are on Zimbabwe today as the elections have started. This will determine the future of the President Robert Mugabe, who has been in power for 33 years. Previous elections in 2002 and 2008 were damaged by allegations of vote rigging and political violence. I have Goolam Ballim, Chief Economist at Standard Chartered, on the line. So what is the political situation like at the moment? Is there a lot of tension?
Dorian, it's helpful to separate the violence and the credibility of the elections. This time around, it does seem there's a substantial amount of civility, and the competitiveness between the MDC and ZANU-PF seems to be not of the bloodletting type that we saw in 2008. So at least in terms of violence, the current situation does appear materially becalmed. Some cynically suggest it is only calm because the MDC is aware and its members are aware that even if there's an absence of violence before the elections, should Mr. Mugabe lose, then that violence will be unleashed. So this is to suggest that there is an air of fear that lingers, and so the actual violence is absent because the fear of violence is doing its work. But that said, if one judges the likely credibility of the event, it is of enormous concern that the voters' roll has not been made public or is not easily accessible. There's also concern that there has not been an update, review, or refresh of the voters' roll, and so the idea that there could be dead people, people of age greater than 110 years, or even a large number of youth that have attempted to register but have been frustrated in the process of doing so, that therefore renders the voters' roll inadequate and part of Mr. Mugabe's ploy to remain in power.
And in your personal opinion, do you think Mugabe will remain in power?
My instinct is that Mr. Mugabe will prevail. The time to elections, the notice to elections and the actual event was less than 30 days. There does appear to be some chaos in terms of its organization, and the MDC at least appears not to have had sufficient time to appropriately prepare. And also in terms of the media, there is far more capture by ZANU-PF of the media than the MDC. So my suggestion is that, again, Mr. Mugabe may prevail.
And Goolam, when Zimbabwe's Finance Minister Tendai Biti took over Zimbabwe's Ministry of Finance in 2009, the country was in economic turmoil with hyperinflation. However, 5 years later, inflation is under control at 5.9%, and we have witnessed the economy improving and looking much more stable. Can you share with us your views on the state of the economy?
It would be perhaps better to characterize the economy as stable. And in the main, the economy is stable because it has been dollarized. So confidence in the political establishment, confidence in the political establishment's capacity to generate prosperity was significantly dented in recent years, and as a consequence, the currency weakened significantly, contributing to spiraling inflation. Since the currency, the Zimbabwe dollar, was relinquished and the American dollar became the de facto currency, that significantly helped to suppress price instability. And effectively, with inflation so much more under control, it became easier for trade in goods and services to take place. So yes, there has been growth, but I regard it more as a stable environment where investment and a general sense of widespread economic activity is largely absent, and I think is not likely to return to the giddy days that Zimbabwe enjoyed in recent decades, at least prior to 2000. That is not likely to return until property rights and more certainty, for example, an indigenization policy is achieved. Then only will we see perhaps a more assertive effort at risk-taking and with it growth.
And looking forward, how do you see the country growing and what sort of implications will the election outcome have?
The sense is that there will continue to be a hesitancy on the part of private sector capital, private sector risk-taking, should Mr. Mugabe prevail. There are concerns and lingering concerns that Mr. Mugabe's grip on power and those that are close to him will continue to render a neo-patrimonialist economy. In other words, an economy or a political system that rewards those it serves to feed the political elite, and the political elite in turn continuing to attempt to maintain a grip on the economy for its own advantage. So quite simply, under Robert Mugabe, the potential is that the economy will remain generally mired and unlikely to return to its go-go days as long as property rights especially remain insecure.
And finally, what role does Zimbabwe play in the region, and what would you like to see from Zimbabwe?
Historically, many will of course record that Zimbabwe was quite a prolific agricultural economy and one that was able to export given surpluses of produce. This alludes to the regional impact as well as how other economies have been either benefiting or stymied, and more stymied than benefiting. In other words, we would like to see an increased regionalization as part of the African Renaissance. Zimbabwe's poor performance over the last decade has certainly detracted from an even more robust performance from the region. And Zimbabwe has typically been a significant source market for, say, South African goods, but has also been a significant corridor market for goods that pass through Zimbabwe but go on to countries further north or northeast of Zimbabwe. So, to the extent that the outcome is perhaps not more favorable for Zimbabwe's prosperity, that could retard the region's growth. And of course, if we do have an outcome that foreign investors, local investors are more comfortable with, and a more prosperous Zimbabwe is a good outcome and can then lead to a more prosperous region as well.
Thank you very much for that. Well, viewers, I will be back tomorrow to have a look at the market reaction from today's FOMC. See you then.